welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
There we are.
Okay, looks like we're on. And I don't even have to show my book because that ad just showed it for us. Hello again. We have 2 more days left of this 2-week venture into our book. I'm Carl Johnoff, and my pen name is Kurt Niemann. And I've talked about that many times in the past. In any event, I wrote Badge 411, and that is this one is a redo of the original that had a title that turned out to be rather unfortunate for publishing a book on law enforcement. In any event, this is Shirley. This is my wife. She is the one that had to go through all the torture of typing this up and getting it ready to send to the publisher. And these last 2 days, I'm going to be doing some shotgunning because I'm going to be trying to tie things in. One of the things that I want to tell you is that, including yesterday's rant. In yesterday's rant, I got into prohibition and the similarities to today's war on drugs. Ethan Lee commented, great to be here again. Going to miss these sessions with you, Carl. Thank you.
That's nice.
Well, you can always buy my book and see me on Facebook or wherever I'm traveling now. In any event, the thing about in my opinion, and Lord knows I have opinions, in my opinion, there is a real similarity with prohibition in the early 20th century and the war on drugs today. The first similarity is the government is trying to enforce individual morality on people that they obviously don't want. So in the case of the prohibition, which is the 18th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, saying all booze is illegal, ended in the 21st Amendment, which said, no, forget the 18th. because fact is, you can criminalize booze, but that's not going to keep people away from booze. So in 1970, we get into the war on drugs, and now we've criminalized the drugs. You know, yesterday I talked about some, I can't remember how many tons of cocaine,
Too much.
like something like 20 odd tons of cocaine, and just worth billions of dollars was seized. Were seized in Ecuador. You know what? People wouldn't be growing and processing and selling this stuff if there wasn't a demand for it, and if their law enforcement agencies and ours, particularly the Border Patrol, but others, local law enforcement agencies as well, they're making huge drug busts on a daily basis. And if there wasn't a public demand for those drugs, why would they be there? And why would they need to be criminalized? What has criminalization done for this? Well, since 1970, we've increased our prison population by 500%. And statistically, according to the resources I've tapped, 1 out of every 5 prison inmates is an inmate because of a conviction on drugs. Has that person destroyed any property or hurt people? Well, yeah, probably so, because everything that we do in life affects, either positively or negatively, other people. Well, believe it or not, I've been known to affect my wife once.
Anyway,
My point is that unless people who are criminal offenders are doing criminal offenses that result in destruction of property, personal injury, real injuries, why are we using all our money to arrest all these people who are, you convict somebody of a drug offense and they go to prison, which means that they'll never see drugs again, right? Like drugs are never smuggled into jails and prisons. Well, that's enough of that, Ren. In any event, one of the things I want to tell you is that everything that we've talked about, including this issue, is addressed in one way or another, somehow or another, from time to time in the stories on the book. How many stories are there? Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to get to some questions that were not answered yesterday. Kay Hasha says, when the public knows about some court proceedings, do you think this should be applied to juvenile delinquency? Should people know who these young criminals are? Oh, boy, we could talk about that for another hour. Fact is that in every state, there's going to be laws regarding what you can do and what you can't do with people who are under the age of, say, 18. And one of the things you can't do is you can't publicize their names because they're juveniles. Is that good? Chad Warren comments, good to see all of you two again. I'm eager to hear from you guys more. Well, thanks, Chad. You probably haven't guessed that I love to talk. In any event, the law, juvenile code in every state prohibits publication of the name and the age of the offenders up to a point. Then they can be. Eleanor says, questions for Shirley.
okay, knowing the gravity of your husband's work, How did you remain supportive? Did you ever want him to quit for safety reasons? Well, I guess I have to say I can't answer that fully because I only met Carl 29 years ago, and so I was not involved in the when he was on the gang squad and at the beginning of the juvenile detention facility years. But I do have to say, and I mentioned this one time last week, I think it was, that we did get a call in the wee hours of the morning saying that they needed Carl's assistance at the detention facility. And I was a wee bit nervous, but yet he assured me he was going to be fine. Everything was going to be fine. And so did I wait to go back to sleep till he came back home? Yes, I did. I think that for women that are married to men as wonderful as Carl have to have some sort of anxiety over what their husbands are doing. But it is such an amazing, wonderful thing that they're doing for these young people. And so it has to be kept in perspective. And that's the way I feel. And of course, when I was, as he said, I was typing the book for him. I mentioned this before too. I was either laughing, crying, or going, how in blue blazes did you get into such a situation? And so it's something that I'm so proud of what he did. I hope to believe that I would have been supportive, come heck or high water. I would have been supportive of him. Thank you for the question.
Well, as a matter of fact, the incident that Shirley's talking about is mentioned in the book. Oh, Lauren Walker says, hi, nice to see you guys again. Well, I'm excited for this session today, too. Thanks, Lauren. Again, there are laws concerning what can and can't be printed in the news media regarding juveniles. Now, if a juvenile is ordered to be tried and handled as an adult offender, then the shackles are taken off. For the most part, juveniles get into offenses, and if they quit doing that after they're 18, very often they can have their records expunged. In any event, their records will be secret unless and until a court orders release of that information. Debbie Does says, I think authorities should focus on training people to properly handle these criminals. Yeah. Humane treatment should still be prioritized and valued. Oh boy, this is, here's a whole semester's worth of lectures on that. This is one of the reasons why I really loved being put in the operator's position of the Juvenile Detention Academy here in our state, because again, being a martial artist, I have a lot of thoughts about what kinds of self-defense and what kinds of restraints are appropriate and inappropriate, juvenile or adult, but particularly juvenile. And a good friend of mine, Phoenix police officer, retired, with whom I did a lot of stuff out in the streets. You'll find that in the book as well. He is a martial artist as well, and he and I got into restraints when we were training people who were in the academy getting ready to work in the juvenile detention facility. We got to be careful. Julia says, love to see you back.
Julia.
Oh, thank you, Julia. Wow. Training is incredibly important. Boy, you'll read a lot about that in my book. And training in my experience, in my humble but well-informed opinion, training should be really prioritized from the onset and continuing on through the career, particularly in law enforcement. Well, no, particularly in any job, any kind of career you may have. Retraining, never get stuck. Never get stuck into a rut and think that, well, now you know everything there is to know about everything there is to know, because you don't. And that was brought up to me many times throughout my career when somebody would do something. I'd have to say, oh my God, why didn't I see that coming? Well, back into qualifications, various law enforcement agency jobs and the requirements. First thing I want to say is that if you're interested in being a sheriff's deputy, a police officer, a probation officer, a parole officer, check with your local authorities as to what the requirements are. I know I've been saying over the last 2 weeks that requirement for probation officer is in educational states is a bachelor's degree in an appropriate background. Well, you know what? I just do not know about all the laws in every state, and I'm going to have to admit that some states may take you right off the streets if you promise to be good. I just don't know. So if you have an interest in any of these positions, I would suggest that you contact your local people and discover what the requirements are. Let me clarify those positions just a little bit more. In the case of sheriff's departments, sheriff's deputies have two kinds of jobs. One of them is a police officers, a police patrol and law enforcement job out on the streets. Where sheriffs generally serve, in my experience, is in unincorporated areas of any given county, so that if you have the city of Chicago, they're going to have police, because the police serve in incorporated towns and cities. If you have parts of the county that are not incorporated, the sheriff's deputies are going to be responsible for that. Leonard Brown says, a book is truly wonderful, Carl. Oh, thank you. If I'd known you during those days and found you written about it, I'd be proud of the work you've done too. Well, thank you, Leonard.
Yeah.
Wow. The responses I've been getting are just probably at least a little bit far beyond what I deserve, but thank you.
No, it's not true. He deserves every bit, because he was so incredibly good to the kids in detention.
And Rosemary says, Shirley, yeah, let me tell you, Shirley undersells herself constantly. She is a very talented and very brave lady. You know what? One of the things that she does nowadays, because we're retired, whatever in the heck that came to be, Shirley teaches, she got into the martial arts when she met me, because I was in the martial arts and I was talking them up, and I talked her into how good stuff like Tai Chi Chuan will really improve your physical and emotional health. And she got into it, and she's a 5th degree black now. And she teaches Tai Chi at one of the really large residential treatment centers for mainly for adults here in the States. It's actually internationally known. She's had Tai Chi students from Europe as well as various states in this country. And she's been doing that for about, I don't know, something like close to 20 years. In any event, where in the heck was it going? Oh, the other thing that sheriffs do, Jared says, Did you encounter any particular difficult or complex cases during your time as a probation and parole officer? How'd you handle them? Oh my gosh, yeah,
The book
see.
talks about several of them.
Yeah, you
Check
know,
them out.
I heard a lady ask sometime early last week. Well, they're juvenile offenders, so you mainly handle shoplifters. Well, yeah, I've handled some shoplifters, but I've also handled homicides and motor vehicle felonies of various kinds, hit and run, theft, whatnot. In terms of a shoplifter, you get my book. One of the things you're going to read about is a 9-year-old girl. Now, just get ready for this. She's 9 years old. She shoplifts like there's no tomorrow. If she is accosted for what she's doing, she gets very, very violent, and I mean, she just pulls out all the plugs, so that even the local police are prone toward let her shoplift from the local bashes, let the store handle it. And what the local stores decided to do was let her do it because she gets too violent. She destroys a lot of property. She destroys a lot of the food. 9 years old, for heaven's sake. And the story goes on from there. So that even just a shoplifter, it can kind of provide a little bit of a challenge for police, for probation. How about for the educators?
I do believe that young lady did get stopped, though.
Ultimately, she did.
But you got to read the story.
And one of the, boy, yeah, there's a lot to that story. Another thing that sheriff's deputies do is they operate county jails. They are the corrections officers in the county jails. And the county jail, and in some cases, cities own and operate their own jails as well. In that level of imprisonment or incarceration, these are people who are arrested and they've been charged with a criminal offense and they're either awaiting trial or possibly awaiting sentencing, but they're not convicted except for those who have been convicted of misdemeanors, a lesser crime according to the law, a crime that is of lesser impact on the community than a felony, which is, again, the really major stuff, all the way up to homicide. So the sheriffs operate these jails. Oh, Mia says, do you think the parents should also be held accountable when their children commit crimes? How do you recognize if this behavior is because of their influence? Oh my, yes, the parents, and boy, believe me, in most cases, regardless whether the parents are in the upper economic class or the way lower, severely impoverished class, regardless of parents do feel the impact of their child going through the juvenile justice system and in some cases the adult criminal system. Yes, they can be held accountable in terms of restitution, in terms of being held accountable for the kid's behavior. And very often when a court orders psychotherapy for the child, court will also order it for the family as well. Let me tell you, none of us walk on water. The only perfect parents I've ever met have been people who have told me they are perfect parents. There've never been any problems, and they're lying to me and they're lying to themselves as well, or at least they're trying to hide the guilt that they're feeling because their kid is in trouble. And believe me, that guilt is going to be real. Paula Forrester says, a former probation officer, I am aware that dealing with gangs and drugs, including minors, was part of your job. Well, hey, Paula, congratulations. Thanks for your help on the street. What counselor lessons has your child received? What counselor lessons has your child received? Any communications from you regarding these incidents? Boy, as I think most any parent would like to say, boy, I tried my best. That doesn't mean that my kids didn't. Now, my kids did not end up in juvenile court, or even better than that, they didn't end up in criminal court. But did they do everything the way that I would have liked to have seen them do it? Oh, absolutely not. And I challenge you to claim to me that your child walked on water and did everything that you wanted to have done, folks. It ain't going to be that way. Oh, Lord, see, all these things that you wonderful folks are bringing up are subjects for hours long discussions. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you're out there, and I'm glad you're thinking about these problems, because these are at the juvenile level. These kids are our future. You know, I'm on Facebook quite a bit. And Facebook, of course, is the place where you know you're going to get the absolute truth absolutely every time. And right. But Jared says, did you encounter someone bribe you for not taking them to prison? Okay, that gets me back to my very first pre-sentence investigation as a rookie. And
is this the one that I caused the name wrong?
Yeah, I entitled that particular story "The Powder Blue Negligee" because when I knocked on the door at 7:30 in the morning for an appointment with the offender and the offender's family, turns out the offender's mother was a professional model, and you could really tell why and how come, because when she answered the door with a big smile on her face, she was wearing a powder blue negligee. And
you have to read the book to get the
were bribes attempted? Yeah, bribes were attempted from time to time. You know, a probation officer is basically, he's a law enforcement officer, but he's actually an officer of the trial court system called Superior Court, Trial Court, the place where the entire juvenile justice system is located, the place where adults accused of criminal behavior are tried and sentenced, the court system. So I'm an officer of the court as a probation officer, and I engage in pre-sentence investigations where I'm looking into a person's background, looking into the victims, looking into everything I can, and making recommendations to the court as to what the sentence should be. I do not work, with the exception of being a juvenile officer. Very often juvenile probation officers work in the juvenile detention facilities as well. And it's a wonderful experience. You can read about that in my book. A parole officer is a person who is an employee of a state corrections system or federal corrections system. And a person who was on parole was convicted of a criminal offense, had to serve some time, and after serving X number of years, was allowed to go back out into the community on parole. I read about this in Facebook and in the newspaper all the time. The people that are writing all this up.
1 minute.
Okay, the people that are writing about probation and parole and whatnot are all journalists who really themselves don't know the difference here. So that realize that those are the basic differences, and look to your own community for the requirements for those jobs. Boy, you know, there's so many. Well, I guess I'll be hitting.
Well, you still have a minute here. So.
Oh, I still have. You know, one of the problems we have in the corrections system, in terms of the introduction of criminalizing drugs, is the 3 strikes and you're out laws that are in many states, where no matter what the offense is,
you gotta say goodbye till tomorrow.
I'll start with that tomorrow. Gosh. Okay, well, Have a wonderful rest of the day, folks, wherever you are. Thank you so much for contacting me and taking an interest in this work. I promise you, this was a super wonderful career. I totally loved it. Buy my book and you'll find out how come. Thanks. Oh my.